My name is Ingrid, and I am 34 years old. I want to tell you about a moment when the world stopped, the last time my entire family sat around and laughed at me. It happened on a warm Saturday afternoon at my sister Nia's baby shower. Everything looked like a photograph from a fancy magazine. Pink balloons floated in every corner. A three-tier cake stood at the center of the room, and 30 guests dressed in perfectly coordinated outfits filled the space with chatter and laughter. Nia sat across from the gift table, wearing a smile she had been rehearsing all week. She said something that made my heart drop straight through the floor. My mother, Carol, nodded along like she was watching a play she had already seen. The guests clapped and smiled on cue. But then my son, Devin, who is usually the quietest person in any room, did something brave. They had tucked him into a small folding chair by the hallway, almost as though they wanted him to disappear. He stood up and asked a single question. The room went so silent, I could hear the ice cubes shifting in the punch bowl. To understand why he said what he said, you have to go back 6 weeks earlier, to the moment it all began. A pile of numbers that simply did not add up. 6 years ago, my husband left me. He didn't say it to my face, and he didn't write a letter. He left a small yellow sticky note on the kitchen counter with 4 words. I can't do this. His wedding ring was sitting right beside the toaster. Devin was only 2 years old. For an entire week, he would walk the front door and press his little face against the glass, waiting for a man who was never coming back. I would pull him away and force a laugh, even though everything inside me felt like it was breaking. At that point, I didn't have much of anything. I had completed half of my accounting coursework and had $340 in my bank account. So I went back to school at night. I studied for my certification exams while Devin slept on a folded blanket under my desk because I couldn't afford a babysitter after 9 o'clock. By 29, I had started my own bookkeeping business, just me and a laptop in a small office above a dry cleaner that always smelled like artificial lavender. By the time I turned 34, I had 11 steady clients and was paying off my house ahead of schedule. Devin was thriving and could name every dinosaur that ever walked the earth. None of that mattered to my family. To my mother, Carol, I was simply the daughter who couldn't keep a husband. To my sister, Nia, I was a cautionary tale. They never asked about my work or how Devin was doing in school. At every holiday and every birthday gathering, the conversation always circled back to the same comparison. Nia had a husband, and I did not. In their eyes, that single fact outweighed everything else. I let them treat me that way for years. Every time, I absorbed the hurt, drove home, and told myself it was fine. But it wasn't fine. My mother called me every Sunday at 4 o'clock. She never asked how life was going. She always started with Nia, Nia's new kitchen floors, Nia's promotion, Nia's husband Mike, and their recent trips. If I tried to mention that Devin had done something wonderful at school, she would say, "That's nice," and steer the conversation straight back to Nia. "Your sister figured it out," she would say, as though life were a secret code and I was too simple to crack it. The message was always the same. Nia married young. Nia had a big house with a big garage. Nia did everything in the right order. I was just a messy first draft that Nia had learned from. One Easter, Devin accidentally knocked a glass off the table. As my mother cleaned it up, she sighed and said, "Your sister made smarter choices, Ingrid. That's all." She said the way you'd comment on the weather. I learned to keep my face very still when she said things like that. Devin learned to do it too. He would go quiet and hold onto my arm. He was 8 years old and already knew when people were being unkind to us. I should have stood up for both of us long before that day. I should have told my mother that her grandson heard every word she said, but I didn't. I carried their disappointment like it belonged to me. When my mother called to tell me about Nia's baby shower, she didn't really invite me so much as inform me that I had to be there at 8 in the morning to set up the chairs. I asked if I could bring Devin. She paused for a long time before saying, "I suppose. Just keep him out of the way." My heart hurt hearing her speak about her own grandson like that. But I just said okay, because that was my habit. Mike, Nia's husband, was the reason everyone believed Nia's life was perfect. He was charming and broad-shouldered, always bringing flowers for my mother and making people laugh at cookouts. Everyone treated him like a prize Nia had won. Nobody seemed to wonder why he was away so often for work. Different towns, long weekends, coming home tired and smelling of a soap that wasn't from their house. But I am a woman who works with numbers. I know when things don't add up. I stayed quiet because I didn't want to cause trouble. About 5 weeks before the shower, Mike called and offered to pick Devin up from school so I could finish some work. I had a bad feeling, but Devin lit up at the idea of getting a milkshake. So I said yes. They were gone for 4 hours. When Devin came home, he was happy and carrying a small paper bag. Mike had bought him a toy, a little red race car meant for a toddler, not an 8-year-old. Devin mentioned that Mike had bought 2 of them, one for Devin and one for someone else, but then he stopped himself. He said he wasn't supposed to say. That night, I found a receipt in Devin's jacket pocket. It was from a gas station in a town called Marbleton, far from anywhere Mike was supposed to have been. I spent 3 weeks knitting a soft yellow blanket for Nia's baby. I wanted to make something beautiful. I wanted to show them I was more than their disappointment in me. The gift table would be full of expensive things wrapped in glossy paper, but I put my heart into every stitch of that blanket, hoping it might change something between us. For days before the shower, Mike sent me a stack of financial documents and asked me to help organize them for a loan application. I sat down with the papers the way I sit down with any client's numbers. What I found made my hands go cold. There was a monthly mortgage payment for a property in Marbleton. There was also a recurring payment to a daycare center in that same town. But Nia wasn't even a mother yet. Mike had been quietly funding an entirely separate life for over 3 years. Another woman, another child. I decided I would tell Nia privately after the shower. I didn't want to destroy her day in front of 30 people. But then Mike took Devin out one more time. When Devin came home, he told me quietly that Mike had brought him to a house where a woman named Sarah lived, and a little boy named Cody who was 3 years old and looked just like Mike. Mike told Devin it was a surprise and made him promise to keep it secret. That night, I found a drawing Devin had made. 2 houses, one with Nia's name and one with Mike's Sarah and Cody. My 8-year-old son had sketched the truth in crayon. I confronted Mike. He didn't deny it for long. Instead, he threatened me. He told me to stay out of it, called me bitter and jealous, and said he would tell the whole family I was trying to get revenge. So I went to the shower. I set up the chairs at 8 in the morning. I kept my mouth shut. I watched Nia open gift after gift of applause and warm smiles. When she reached my blanket, she held it up briefly and said, "Oh, homemade. That's so you, Ingrid." Then set it aside like it was clutter. A few minutes later, the joke started. My mother said I had made bad choices in life. Then Nia made a comment about how lucky her baby was to have a father, unlike Devin. People laughed. They clapped. They looked right at my son and laughed. Devin stood up from his folding chair in the hallway. He wasn't loud. He wasn't dramatic. He simply asked Nia, in a clear and steady voice, whether she would like him to tell everyone about Mike's other family, about Sarah, about Cody, about the house in Marbleton. The yard went completely silent. Mike tried to recover, tried to twist it into something else. But Devin had the drawing in his backpack. Nia pulled it out herself. She looked at the 2 houses her nephew had drawn in crayon, and she understood everything at once. Mike left the party without saying another word. Nia sat there in the middle of all her pink balloons and perfectly matched decorations and realized that she was going to become a single mother, just like the sister she had been mocking all afternoon. My mother had nothing to say. I picked up my blanket, took my son's hand, and we went home. In the weeks that followed, Nia called me. She needed help finding out what Mike had hidden, how much money, where it had gone, how long it had been happening. I went through everything for her. I sent her the yellow blanket, too, because whatever had happened between us, that baby was still coming into the world and would still need something warm. My mother has not apologized. I have stopped waiting for her to. Devin and I are fine. Better than fine, actually. We eat ramen on the living room floor sometimes, and we laugh. We talk honestly. We don't have to keep anyone else's secrets or shrink ourselves to fit into a room where we were never really wanted. Our home is small and it is ours, and there is nothing in it that isn't true. People who go quiet in difficult rooms are often paying very close attention. Devin proved that. He watched everything for 8 years. The empty-seated school play, the toy meant for a toddler, the way his grandmother talked about him like it was an inconvenience. And when the moment came, he stood up and said the one thing that no one in that carefully decorated yard was prepared to hear. He learned it from watching me survive. And I learned, finally, from watching him speak.